Hello, Bob Riefel here, preaching and teaching minister of the Spring Hill Christian Church of rural Ocklawakanee, Georgia. And welcome to another lesson on Old Testament survey or survey of the Old Testament. Last week we talked about, or I gave a brief overview and just a little bit of some general information about the book of 1 Samuel. And so today's lesson, or today's overview, is about the book of 2 Samuel. And so the author is Nathan or Gad, it's been said, or perhaps another prophet. 1 Chronicles 29:29. The meaning means covered under for Samuel's meaning. The key verse is 2 Samuel 12:13. When David confessed, I have sinned against the Lord, and Nathan said, the Lord has taken away your sin. Psalm 51 and 52. The key word is sin. The key concept is sin. The date that it was written is about 925 BC. The period covered is the period of David's reign as king, about 38 years. The purpose is history. It tells about the man after God's own heart, David. Life which consistently recognized the kingship of God in victory, in defeat, in sin, and in repentance in David's life. 2 Samuel is a book about sin. Its nature, it's cancerous, its condition, it's forgivable, and its end, which is punishment. The historical setting, 2 Samuel parallels much of 1 Chronicles. 2 Samuel is from the viewpoint of the historian, the total picture. 1 Chronicles is from the viewpoint of personal interest, not complete history, but many additional personal items. 2 Samuel is basically a book about Israel's greatest king, David. Shows his depending on God in every situation. David was a grand character, intensely human, impulsive, whole-souled, generous to a fault. He did some things that are very, very wrong, but he was heart and soul devoted to God and the ways of God. In a world of idolatry and in a nation that was continually falling into idolatry, David stood like a rock for God. In every circumstance of life, he went directly to God in prayer and petition, in repentance, when he sinned, in thanks and in praise. 2 Samuel shows his sin as well as his godliness. Israel's greatest king is not whitewashed in 2 Samuel. Some important events in 2 Samuel are that David becomes king, first of Judah and then later of all Israel. Jerusalem was made the new capital. Uzzah and the moving of the ark. David's kindness of Mephibosheth. Say that once quickly, let alone 3 times quickly. David and Bathsheba, David, or the death of David's son, the revolt of Absalom. Some of the lessons that we learn from 2 Samuel, some general lessons from 2 Samuel, is the importance of holy things. For example, Uzzah's death in chapter 16. Be able to accept God's will, even if it means not being able to do something you really want to do. For example, David wanted to, but not permitted to build the temple. Chapter 7. A proper attitude before a battle for God is a lesson. Keep up your courage. Show strength and let the Lord do what is good in his sight. The example in chapter 10, verse 12, the example of Joab before a battle with the Syrians and the Ammonites. And a lesson we learn is the proper attitude toward death. Chapters chapter 12, verses 22 and 23. For example, David, pray while alive. God may grant mercy. Back to business, dead are with the Lord. Ideas concerning sin in 2 Samuel is the need of absolute obedience to God. Idleness, no work to be done, brings temptation to sin. An example is David stayed in Jerusalem while Israel was away fighting the Ammonites. Chapter 11, too much food, too much drink, sex when there was no work to do. Also see 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. Ability of man backed by God's authority to point out sin, even in the king's life. For example, Nathan to David, chapter 12. Willingness to accept sin being pointed out in his own life. David did not suspend David or defame Bathsheba. And then consequences in physical sense of sin remain, although guilt is removed. David's son dies as a result of his sin with Bathsheba. Chapter 12, verse 14. He himself was absolved from sin, but there were physical results that stayed, physical punishments that remained, consequences. You reap what you sow. Chapter 13, Absalom kills Ammon after he laid with Tamar. Difficulty of forgiving others, even when God has forgiven you. For example, David asked Absalom back but would not look at him. Chapter 14. So that's just kind of a brief overview, some general information from the book of 2 Samuel. I hope that motivates you to want to read the chapter of or the book of 2 Samuel and learn all about what it has to do with David and with sin and how it applies to our lives. I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have enjoyed presenting it to you, and I hope you have a great rest of the day, and may God bless you.